At the recent Wooden Boat Festival, there were several seminars, and one of them was called Tapes on the Table. And it was very interesting using thin plastic to work out, to wet out your fiberglass, cut the tapes, and then place them. And it's not for every situation, but for some situations it's a very good method to use. And the follow-on to that is Tapes on the Table. And I did a posting on my blog for Tapes on the Table. That's where you use the same method, but instead of cutting out tapes, you cut out patterns, and then you're able to place the fiberglass in place because you've already cut it out to shape. And there's some advantages to it. It's not the end all. I think if I had planned better, I wouldn't have to do it, but since I didn't, it was a good way to save the project. So to do Tapes on the Table, you need a table. This is just a piece of scrap plywood, and I'm gonna use the thin plastic, painter's plastic. What we'll do is we're going to cut this out and put this on the board. Now, they recommend using tape, but I find that tape and this plastic do not play well together. Even this blue tape, which is not supposed to be permanent, wants to try to be permanent on this plastic. So this, I bought the 4 feet. They also make it in 9 feet. So we'll just go ahead and we'll make it placed here. And so now, if you put, okay, you can see I didn't do it right. You're supposed to fold this out in the correct order. Yep, completely wrong. There we go. I got an end now. Fortunately, if you get this all, you want to try to keep it folded because it, like it's outside, it gets blowing, it makes a mess. Okay, so now we have our plastic on the table, and I have the excess hanging over. At least I hope it's excess hanging over. There we go. Okay. Okay, now we got plastic on here. And I have my fiberglass. This is 6 ounce. We're going to lay it out here. We'll do it this way. And what I'm going to do is we're going to be putting 2 layers of glass and peel ply on this joint. So this is just, I put the fillet in, I've sanded it, so it's ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut out 2 tapes. One's going to be, I'm going to cut as bi-axial, and the other one will be straight. So the first thing we need to do, actually the first thing I like to do, is have my denatured alcohol ready. That way, when I make a mess, I can clean it up quickly. Okay. Next thing we need is, oops. Well, could I get a mixing cup? I seem to have forgot to bring it.
How big?
Small, 4 ounce, 6 ounce, 8 ounce. That would work.
Okay, it's
Actually, that a little
got a
bit.
rounded bottom, so it's kind of shifty.
Oh, why don't we get a?
I got a flat bottom.
Yeah. So one of the problems with glass when you cut it is you get these frayed edges, and this method will hopefully eliminate frayed edges. So we're going to go ahead. So I'm thinking this is going to take probably 2 pumps to wet this out. I could be wrong. It could be 3. So I always go the resin, then the hardener, then resin, and then hardener. And if I lose count, it doesn't matter because it's still in the right proportions. And, some people, they say, oh, I can keep count. Well, get older, you can't keep count anymore. So we're going to mix this for about a minute. Now in the demo, I can't remember the guy's name, I should have looked it up. He poured the epoxy out and then put the gloss on top and then spread it out then you put the plastic on and you spread it out. I found that didn't work for me. So I'm gonna do it my method. And, you know, his method, I guess if a little bit of skill, you could do it his method, which goes faster and less messy, but it didn't work for me.
Did he use a squeegee to spread it out?
He did. Used the plastic squeegee.
Plastic squeegee?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he worked fine for him.
Yeah.
When I was doing it, it did not work fine. An example of that, okay, so here, this was a good one. This is leftover scrap. This is what we're making, except that was leftover. And I realized after I got all done that if I had more templates made, I could have had less waste. But that's from patterns on the table as opposed to what we're doing is tapes on the table. So now I've lost count how long I've been stirring, but it's probably pretty close.
Is that about the same weight as fiberglass as this?
Yes. Yeah.
What weight is this?
This should be 6.
What?
6.
6?
Yeah. No, that feels like 4. That should be 6. This is 4.
Of what kind of weed?
This is, I can't remember, it's standard weave, not bi-axial. So there's one where they use a heavy thread and a light thread, and I don't remember what it's called. I don't
E-glass.
use, what?
E-glass.
Well, all this is e-glass. But there's different types of weave. There's one where they use a heavy thread one direction and a smaller thread the other direction. And that's usually called unidirectional. This is it's generically called fabric. I don't remember the exact term they use for this, but this has threads even in both directions. And this is often called tooling fabric. Yeah. If you want to come up, if you're not familiar with it, come up and take a look at it. So this is, for any of the small boats, this is something you'd be using. This feels like 4 ounce because it's pretty light, but I used to use 4 ounce, but I've gone just to 6 as my standard. 10 for things where there's going to be wear, and then I have 17 ounce when I really want to get serious. Okay, so looks like we don't have enough left here, but I'm going to go ahead and just pour it out, and we'll see how well this works out. And if I have to make up a little more, it's better to make up more than to waste it, because I consider the epoxy is your gold. So we got our yellow squeegee, and I'm just going to work this around. One thing I want to do is try to eliminate any of the white spots. So I got a little bit of white right here in the middle. Work that in a little bit. And I'm not real worried about the edges because this is bigger than I need. Okay, this looks pretty good. Now the magic happens. And doing this outdoors can get really exciting when the wind's blowing.
You want to get stuck to your shirt?
I did not get it stuck to my shirt.
Oh, I see. There we go. Wow. This one, yeah, that's good on both sides. Yeah. Okay.
This is the tricky part, is you want to get rid of the creases. And I haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Almost like a 4-minute vacuum
Yes.
bag.
Yes, I thought about, actually, I have everything to do vacuum bagging except the vacuum pump. And I'm going to do a write-up where doing laminations with fiberglass in the middle. So I did a practice run, and I just need to do a write-up on my blog for that. And I think it would have worked better with a vacuum pump, which is what they did at the Wooden Boat Festival. but I was able just to use a piece of plywood and just plop it down. So I have everything in here. I have more than everything I need. Okay. Let me get a magic marker. Get a magic marker?
You want a Sharpie?
Sharpie.
Yeah.
Yep, I thought I had everything in here. It probably is in here, I just can't find it. Okay, so this is my 2-inch wide stick. And the 2-inch wide stick is going to be the first layer of going on there. So I need to mix up a little more fiberglass, or sorry, a little more epoxy. So we'll get this mixed up and let it sit.
So you have almost unlimited open time on the sandwich there, because it's so thin it wouldn't go off for an hour.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't stretch it to an hour,
Yeah.
but definitely a half hour.
Yeah.
Normally, this would be like 15 minutes, but yeah, because it is so thin and spread out, and you're not going to have an endothermic reaction with this. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
You still will have to get it over the minimum temperature. This is slow, so that means it has to be above 60 for at least 2 hours for it to cure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing this, you know, in a shop that's 50, like with the old shop, I would often use the slow when I'm doing the hull. I would do slow, and then when I'm done, I would turn on the space heaters, run it up to 60 degrees, and you know, have a couple hours at 60, and I knew it was going to cure over, you know, over the week. Okay, so we have our epoxy, and I'm going to, don't anybody touch the wet stuff. Okay, so we have our joint, and we're going to do a 2-inch tape. So we're going to wet this out at 2 inches, and then we're going to go a 4-inch tape. So I'm going to bring this out about 6 inches is what I'm going to want. Maybe it's looking like about 5, but that's kind of what I'm looking at here. So that's all wetted out now, and we're going to let that soak in, because any wood, you need to let the epoxy soak in. And you either can do it, you can do dry on dry, where the boat's dry, the fiberglass is dry, you put the glass on, you soak it in, but then you got to make sure you give it time to soak in. You can do wet on dry, where the epoxy like this was wet, but then we put it on a dry joint. That works also. It's still not preferred because you're not giving time. You can get dry joints, but sometimes that works out better. Then there's wet on wet. I've done wet on wet where I'm doing wide tapes. Because wet on wet really works well with wide tapes. You wet it out. Some of this we wet it on ahead of time. We let it sit. We wet out our tape, and then we put our tape on. So it depends. So I'm going to cut this on a bi-ax. So this is approximately 45 degrees. So I'm going to do a 2-inch bi-ax.
So I get the cap.
Okay, I still need it. Okay, so we got our tape there. I'm gonna still need it. So I'm just gonna cut it, and I'm gonna use my stick to help cut it here. Whoops, got offline. That happens. This is a little slippery. Okay, and we'll cut it right about there. There's our tape. Now, I would hand this around, but that is live about people doing that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this and go, oh look, it's too long. So I'm going to cut off a little bit here to make the right length. There we go. This is length. So we're just the right length. So what we'll do is we're going to pre-fold it, to give it a little crease, and then very carefully I'm removing the outside, and this is the mess. You got a lot of messy stuff here. And then we're going to come in. Yeah, it's epoxy. Okay, we're going to set it in here.
that's a clean,
Okay.
Yeah.
that's,
Especially for the.
yeah,
that-
you can
Okay.
get crisp, clean
See?
joints, wow.
Yeah, I just placed it in there, very little mess. None of the fibers started unraveling.
Yeah.
Which, this is, I cut this on a 45
Right,
degree.
right.
If you cut this 45 degree, this would be a huge mess.
Yeah.
And I assure you, I've done it. It is guaranteed to be a mess. Okay. Here we go.
Now you gotta pick
Yeah.
another piece of plastic.
Okay.
Look at that.
Wow.
Okay.
That
Nice.
is so cool.
And this is where I have my alcohol.
Yeah.
I do this a lot. This way I don't have to change gloves as often. Sometimes I do, I get them so covered with epoxy you have to, but do that. So we got our first layer on there, and we're just gonna come in and we're gonna dab a little bit here, just to get a little wet. Doesn't need to be a lot wet, but just wanna make sure that we're not getting a dry joint. And so I didn't put a lot on, but I'm just got enough there to make sure I don't have a dry joint. Okay, so we're gonna do now we're gonna do we'll do a 4-inch tape. I don't need to do a 4-inch tape, but I'll do a 4-inch tape. And okay, so there's my 4-inch tape. I'm gonna go ahead and just cut it out.
With that first one, there's enough adhesion that you don't have to be too delicate when you're dabbing on there. There's not too much worry about it scrunching up.
Well, it's off a little bit, so I could come in here and I could just work it so it's straighter. And I can do that without too much trouble, just by dabbing. I can move it around a little bit just by pulling on it, and I can get it perfectly straight. But honestly, you don't need it perfectly straight. This is hand grenades, close enough. I mean, if it's not perfectly straight, nobody's gonna notice, except you.
Yeah.
Over and over.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know every mistake I've done on my boat. Okay, so there's my 4-inch straight tape. And of course we made it way too long, so I'm gonna cut it back. So we got our 4-inch tape, which will go right over top of it. Again, I'll fold it and then carefully peel off the outside. And straight tape is easier to work. And you notice I put this little dot there to help me get it right on the center. And the nice thing is, I'm working out the bubbles, and I'm not getting epoxy everywhere because I still got the glass. I mean, I still got the plastic helping me out.
Right.
Work the bubbles out. I can even do it with a squeegee if it was clean. Okay. Now we pull the plastic off. If you want to come take a look.
That is so.
And I have not gone back and cleaned it up. This is just after pulling it off.
Really nice. Remember I forgot it. Oh, yeah. Sticking up. Yeah. What a great technique.
Yeah. And you said that's E-class?
This is all, yeah, E-glass is a funny glass. It's the
15 minutes
cheapest
and I talked with-
because look, everything, all electronics use PC boards. They're made with E-glass.
And it bends better then, right? You use E-glass over S-glass on a tighter bed then?
I think it's more the weight. And
Okay.
it's a combination of the weight and the weave. And so it's there's a lot of things you gotta work out together. So like bi-axial, can sometimes do better bends than straight glass.
Make a huge mess.
And so I'm just gonna wet this out a little bit. I wanna
that's
make sure that I have it wetted out enough that when I put my peel ply on, that I get, and there I'm starting to pull these fibers out, so I have to be careful. What I want is, when I do the peel ply, I want enough epoxy so that the peel ply makes a bridge between the end of the glass and the wood. So I have less work I need to do.
Sanding, right?
Yes, less sanding,
Yeah.
less fairing. And I come in with my peel ply.
How does the peel ply come? Does that come in rolls too?
Comes in rolls. Yeah.
Different widths?
I only buy the 60-inch.
Oh, 5 foot wide?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sure this is economy. It's not the cheapest, but it's cheaper. And I use lots of it, so that's why I buy the cheaper. They have better quality, but I don't have the need for it. Again, I fold this in, and I'm just going to work this, just tap this down, and then I'm going to come in with my brush mostly dry. I'm just going to tap it in from the center. So what I want is, I'm trying to get a solid connection between the glass and the peel ply.
So you're making it disappear, the peel ply?
Well, you want it to wet out.
Wet out, yeah, that's what I mean, so you don't see any of the white.
Yeah. And this bottom I did very well on. The top I didn't do as well. So what I can do, there's a couple ways. You can come in and just add a little more epoxy to help it out. Or if it's already very wet, you can come in with denatured alcohol, and that lets the epoxy, thins the epoxy a little bit on the top layer, and it'll push through.
Oh, you can, just brushing on a little bit of denatured alcohol.
Yeah, just a little. And you gotta be really careful that you don't
Thin it
put
out.
too much in it.
Yeah, so you wash out the.
Yeah, you don't want to wash the epoxy out. So I got a little bubble there. I want to make sure I get out. And I'm gonna quit because I'm tired of working on this, but that's the idea. So this is tapes on the table.
Wow.
20 minutes and you talk us through it.
Yeah.
So I discovered completely by accident that you can use a shower curtain as
It's
a
like
peel
a
ply.
plastic.
Yes.
If you have a woven, not the solid plastic ones, but the woven ones, I don't know, they're made of, I guess it's just nylon, finely woven nylon.
Well, this is supposed to be polyester.
Supposed to,
Yeah.
Anyway, I had one that I was just using as a drop cloth to keep.
That's kind of what I thought, based on the name, but I was familiar with
Yeah, I had some, I was using it as a drop cloth to keep from getting epoxy everywhere, and I had like a puddle that dripped onto it, and I just, when I went to pick it up, and I bent it, and it just came off.
Oh, the epoxy just came off of it.
Yeah, epoxy comes right off of those shower curtains.
I suppose you could try it first to make your shower curtain.
Yeah, don't use the one you plan to put back in the basket.
Yeah.
Marital discord will result.
Are there any questions?
How long does it take for the peel ply? When can you peel that off? Just like the next day?
You want it to be, you want to do it sometime between green and really cured. So
Okay.
the next day is generally where I do it. You don't want to wait a week.
No?
If you wait a week, then it's harder to get off.
Okay.
You don't want to do it when it's green, because then you can pull the fiberglass off with it.
So the epoxy, I mean, maximum cure, like 7 days?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably temperature dependent too.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
It's temperature dependent, it's the
Humidity.
resin, the hardener dependent,
Yeah.
a lot of things, but I like to give, like before sanding something, I like to give it a week.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people, and even in, I just don't,
After you've taken off the peel ply, you want to give,
no, even,
you
I
give
want
the
the
epoxy a week.
I want to give I want to give this a week from today when I put it on, so it's completely cured before I sand it. So I'm minimizing the amount of uncured hardener resin that's gonna get tossed in the air.
And they're gonna give it at least 24 hours before you take the peel ply out.
Yes. Now, if I was using fast and today was getting 80 degrees, I could probably do it this evening.
Yeah.
But this is slow. I would give it 24 hours. Just, you don't want to wait a week. Ask me how I know. Well, when I was working on my Tolman, I would put peel ply on, and then I'd come back the next week to work on it, and it's sometimes tough to get off.
What happens if
It's just harder.
it's just hard?
It's just harder. You just have to work harder to get it off. That's all.
What happens with the peel ply is that the epoxy goes right through it. And essentially, you're breaking the little strands of epoxy that go through the pores in the cloth. They're not strong enough to keep you from ripping it off, but the stronger they get, the harder it is, because you literally can have a puddle of epoxy. If you have too much epoxy, you can wind up with a puddle on top of your peel ply.
That's gonna get hard.
Yeah.
And I like to clean up all the epoxy on there with denatured alcohol, just to be safe. And now I'm gonna have to deal with that too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Really
Excellent.
If you can you bring that back when you're
Yes.
a couple weeks ago?
Yes.
That joint?
Yep, I'll do that.
That's, I love the way that Phil is plus.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, if